Good day, folks. This is Greg Judy at Green Pastures Farm. Today we're in Cochise County, an area called Three Canyons, and got special guests with me today. This is Karen and Ricardo and Micah, and I just want you all to tell a little bit about what you're about and where we're at and what's going on.
Who starts?
You start.
Okay. Hi. This is a project that got its start 6 or 7 years ago. It's a county-owned piece of property. We're finally got the cattle on. We're doing managed grazing, and the purpose is to improve the soil health and increase rainfall infiltration and reduce flooding.
So yeah, I think this is a follow-up from a video that was done 2 years ago.
Yep.
After Greg and Jan installed the fence that you see here. Took a bit to get the electricity developed, and so we could pressurize the water. I think it's important to remind your audience, Greg, that this is essentially a learning laboratory that Cochise County has developed, because we're looking to explore an alternative to traditional engineering and by using land management. So we want to mimic grazing animals, which are behind us here, or at least former grazing animals in the form of livestock, to be able to get the water cycle and the mineral cycle back repaired. We've got the San Pedro River a mile from this site to the east, and so this site is really a flood control project. It's also a groundwater recharge project. Karen was an individual that shepherded the Cochise County Recharge Network, and this is one of about 7 or 8 installments along the San Pedro River that does not have civil infrastructure. Karen and I, by the way, are civil engineers. So we're really hired by the Flood Control Department of Cochise County to be able to explore this land management practice as an alternative to concrete and steel, something that Karen and I were trained to do, but we learn better. Those measures are centralized and they don't serve the watershed very well. So that's why we're borrowing heavily from nature and using this livestock to heal those symptoms of desertification. And so we're grateful to have Greg back out here again after 2 years of the phase 2 of the project, which is the construction or installation phase of the fence and the water. And now we're on a 5-year project with the county, and we just started implementation about 45 days ago. Micah's the rancher that he's got a contract with the county to run his livestock, which are behind us here.
Micah, talk a little bit about your operation and what you're doing. You didn't just give them the whole 480 acres. Tell them a little bit about what you're doing out here.
My name is Micah Garcia, and I manage the One Lazy Diamond Ranch, and we put our cattle out here on the county land, and we're not putting the cows on the whole entire acreage at once. We're stripping it up into strips, different paddocks, and testing different size paddocks for different densities of cattle to see the difference between the one to the other, to see how much difference it produces in feed later on.
Yeah, so what he's done, folks, is he's got polywire, which is behind us here, and then he's got it on geared reels and these O'Brien step-in posts, the blue ones. And I asked him this morning, I said, Micah, how long does it take you to put in a paddock and move these animals? And you said if you didn't have the quad, it was 15 minutes?
Yeah, about 15 minutes.
15 minutes. And how many animals do you have in here?
There's 78 animals in here right now.
Yep. And we've got water, folks, every 500 feet down this line here. And so we've got basically one single fence going in a great big L shape here. And Mike has already grazed this. Can you all see a difference? Jan, you want to show the difference between this side and the side that they're on? They've absolutely...
And then I'm going to show what it looked like.
Yeah, so this is a control over here. Ricardo or Gary, you want to talk about the control a little bit? What we did right here?
Well, we've fenced off a 2-acre piece that will not ever be grazed during this project. It's a control so that we can see if we hadn't had cattle out here, what would happen. So, you might think that looks pretty good right now. Well, it does, but that grass is going to choke out the grass that wants to grow next year. So we're also doing a lot of monitoring on this project so that we will have the data to show what happens in 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 years in the control section, in the lightly grazed all the way up through the more heavily grazed. We're keeping track of everything, how long we're in each area, where those areas are, how long it is before we come back. So it'll be very well documented, and we can show what the results are, and we can point to why those results happened.
Yeah.
Well, the thing that fascinated me last night when we came in here, we started flipping these cow paths over. It's been here for like 2 to 3 weeks. Folks, it looked like you took a 1/8" drill bit and just drilled holes all over underneath these paths. There's dung beetles in here. They came.
Well, how soon did they come?
Within 2 to 3 days,
Where do they come from, Micah?
everywhere.
From your farm.
And there were
Came from my
thousands.
farm.
There were thousands
Yes.
of them.
Every cow patty had 20, 30 or
Oh.
more.
Yeah, maybe 100
Yeah.
in the big ones.
Well, folks, I can tell you this: they're drilling down. They're putting holes in the ground, and also you've got birds in here spreading out your manure. It's hard to find a virgin manure pile that's not intact. They're just spread open, and so the more you get them spread open, you're going to get a better utilization out of that manure. The flies have got to have a big old intact manure pat to lay their fly eggs in. Sorry, goodbye flies. You don't have habitat here. Courtesy of the dung beetles and the birds.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of bird activity.
Yep.
So, Ricardo, talk a little bit about how we're following nature here. So you're telling me that you're kind of going back to what happened maybe even before white man arrived.
Yep. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
what
So
did that look like?
right. So to extend on what I was saying before, what Greg just mentioned here, what nature looked like in terms of watershed health, everything was functioning. The mineral cycle, the water cycle, the diversity of the community was around here. All of the solar panels in the forms of leaves throughout the year were converting solar energy through photosynthesis, and it was producing a 10 to 20 foot thick topsoil. As an engineer, I'm a consultant for the county. I work for West Consultants, and I think it's important to note some of the things that Greg mentioned about the holes in the ground and to kind of lean into that. One of the big threats that most of my contemporaries don't talk about in the flooding community is compaction. That's the real threat to flooding, and nobody talks about compaction. And when you see these dung beetles drilling holes, these are opportunities for water to be captured where it falls and be useful where it falls, as opposed to run lateral across the top of the ground and be vulnerable to evaporation. So what we want to do here, in the spirit of what things looked like before the white man, is we want to mimic those natural patterns, but specifically so we can communicate with the scientific community. For me to go to a floodplain administration conference and be able to say, hey, there's a different way, there's a better way. Nature had it dialed in for about 4 billion years, which is about the length that life has been here on planet Earth, compared to how Karen and I were trained, which was really an industrial age assembly line thinking that's only been around for about 140, 150 years. So not a lot of time to perfect an industrial system when nature's already had it dialed in. And so we're not doing anything, it's not rocket science. We're doing something that's so old, and we're just mimicking that, where we're wanting to convert, again, compaction and evaporation to infiltration and transpiration. So we'd rather have the hydrologic cycle function through the plant and create a local microclimate, as opposed to wait for large storms that come off the oceans and rain here and have, larger rain events,
Floods.
followed by longer periods of drought. And so what we're trying to do on this 400 acres is prove that that is possible.
Well, I guess the argument that we hear all the time is, well, it may work in Cochise County, but it's not going to work, on the other side of Tucson or whatever. I get the same thing in Missouri. I think if we could get the education out there, we can ramp this up.
Yep.
Folks, there's an opportunity here in Arizona and through the whole West to use those animals right there to absolutely capture rainwater. And we all know we have a water issue here in the West. Look at the Colorado River. What if y'all had the most rain this year you've ever had in the history in this county?
Yep.
if we took all that rain and held it out here on this land instead of let it go into the river, oh, it's
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
It's scary how much water you could hold,
Well,
Yep.
you know?
And
And-
eventually it would get to the river. It would get to the river underground.
Right.
And it would be
Aquifers.
clean.
Yes.
right.
So here's
Right.
some metrics for whatever it's worth. If you just take a foot, and it rains more than a foot here, but if you just take 12 inches,
Yes.
for every acre, that can hold 326,000 gallons of water. So if it
An
rains
inch
here,
would.
12 inches
12
would,
inches
so
would.
that's a year. But it rains almost double that here, or at least it did this year, right? So that we're talking about even more per acre that could be sequestered here
Right
as
here.
a sponge
Yeah.
in the land here.
And we're breaking the tops, the capping.
Yep.
We're putting litter down.
Yep.
We're creating ponds by the hoof prints.
So
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about the infrastructure it took to do this. I mean, you all hired Jan and I to come out here, and you helped a lot.
I
too,
helped a
didn't you?
lot.
You
Yes.
really did. I'm serious. Now, this lady was a help. And we put this in, and we were here about 7 days. And we didn't, I mean, we put in water line. This poor fellow here lived on a trencher for a while, trenching a line. But once we got it in, I mean, you don't have a lot of infrastructure here. And Micah, you're out here controlling 78 head of cattle with a piano wire.
Yep.
I'm sorry, folks, but with diesel fuel going up, fertilizer prices going up, we need to look at a different way, possibly to heal the land, and at the same time, we've got something we can feed our communities here.
Healthy
Healthy
food.
grass-fed baby.
Greg, I'm sorry, I got to jump in on that. I did a project for another county in here in Arizona with the same size of watershed coming off a mountain range into a Piedmont, then in terminus with being a river. And it was a centralized flood control facility that was about 15 acres, and that was about $12 million
$12 million.
back in 2012. And it solved only one problem, flooding, which is symptomatic relief. And when I was training the county in holistic management, I'm the director of the Arizona Savory Hub, and so I'm using their material to work it into the engineering conversation. I think it was one of your staff at the time, because you're the former county engineer, that for multi six figures, less than $1 million, you'll not only be able to control or prevent flooding with the 480 acre site here, but you also get the benefit of water quality, dust mitigation, soil loss, and the list goes on, because you're solving watershed problems at its root. So when you look at $12 million back in 2012, and we know with inflation that's changed compared to
A
less
fraction.
than $1 million, a fraction, and you get all these benefits, and you not only control floods, but where do you think that water's going when you have infiltration?
Yeah.
We get the recharge the groundwater aquifer and support the base flows of the San Pedro River.
Yeah.
So that's why this is one of the installments of the Cochise Conservation Recharge Network here. So we're very excited about that
I
opportunity.
think the thing that excites me the most is when I came in last night and I saw the life. The life was here already. And he's only been here 45 days. He's only been here 45 days. So when you make a change in a brittle environment like this, folks, things happen pretty darn quick.
And we didn't expect that.
No, I didn't. So I didn't. I mean,
It was in tough shape.
We had
It
faith.
was.
It was in tough
We had
shape.
faith in you guys.
Well, when we put this in, I'm like, are we ever going to grow anything out? And we came back and said, wow. So anyway, I want to wrap this up. Any last closing remarks before we quit here? Folks, hit that subscribe button on the way out, and keep watching this channel. There's going to be more updates on this, and I think it's a very exciting subject, and I'm excited about it. Thank you all.